we have not made it any secret that Delaney was conceived in my first marriage. Brandon has adopted her. When we tried to have a baby of our own, biologically, that would be Julianne. We tried for 2 years, and the reason we tried for 2 years is because of our age. Nobody took us seriously at the 1-year mark, but we had been trying for 2 years and nothing was happening. I knew I had PCOS, and I had known that for many years. I started birth control pills when I was 16 and some change after a date rape that ended up in a pregnancy and miscarriage. So I was regular as long as I was on the birth control pill. I was having so many side effects from hormones, etc., that we were either using condoms or withdrawal or just not bothering because we had never conceived together. And we had had a sexual relationship for 3 years and never got pregnant. So I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I left my ex-husband, which is terrible timing, but that's how my life works. And so I thought I could get pregnant. I thought, you know, whatever, maybe it was the stress or whatever, but Brandon and I tried for those 2 years and nothing happened. So I mentioned it to my OBGYN, and she had known that I had had irregular periods. Her suggestion was to go on birth control pills, which really just masks the problem instead of fixing the problem. And I didn't want the added hormones in my body, plus we were trying to have a baby, and why would I want to be on birth control pills if we were trying to have a baby? It just never made much sense to me. So finally at the end of the 2 years, she said, let's do Clomid, let's test him. Brandon tested fine. She said, let's do Clomid for 3 months. If that doesn't work, I'm going to have to send you out to a specialist. This was my regular OBGYN. First month didn't work. Second month didn't work. Third month, I went in on day 21 to have progesterone drawn to see if I had ovulated, and they told me that I had not ovulated. I likely had not ovulated, so to be expecting my period. Which is hilarious because just a couple days later I had a positive pregnancy test in my hand and I had little Julianne. I had Julianne despite my beta numbers not doubling like they thought they should. We went in at 6 weeks looking for a heartbeat. There was no heartbeat. I cried on the table because I knew what it meant. Poor Brandon was like trying to catch up on all the pregnancy stuff, and I knew what it meant because I'd had a baby before, and so I was hysterical. And my doctor said, you know, maybe the timing's off, and I was like, I was on Clomid. There's no way that the timing is off. Like, I know everything about this cycle for sure. And so we went in a week later, and she was still there, and she had a heartbeat. And so we just knew from the very beginning of our relationship that building a family was going to be very hard. And so we've had to fight for it. After Julianne's pregnancy, which was extremely hard on me, I had hyperemesis, I fainted at one point, and could not remember the last 2 hours of my life. The last thing I had remembered was talking to my dad on the phone, and Brandon called my dad and said, when did you talk to Stephanie on the phone? And my dad was like, it was like 2 hours ago, what's up? We both were kind of like, well, maybe this is God's sign that this is it, we're done. And I went on birth control pills after Julianne was born. I nursed her for 2 weeks. That didn't go well. So at my 6-week checkup, I asked for birth control pills, and I went on them. That was She was born in June, so that was like July-ish before my birthday. The beginning of January, the end of December, beginning of January, I found out I was pregnant, despite taking every single of my birth control pills at the same time. No matter what, had not been on antibiotics, I was pregnant. And I thought that that was like the most ironic thing ever, that I had had so much help for Julianne and needed nothing for our baby number 3. So we miscarried baby number 3. Everything was fine. My blood work was coming up great. I went in, had an ultrasound. Brandon got stuck in the office at a meeting, which he has forever beat himself up over. And he missed the ultrasound. And so I saw our baby. Our baby's heart was beating. Everything looked great. Everything was measuring fine. My dates were just a touch off, but we weren't quite sure because I was on birth control at the time. So my doctor was like, everything's great. And then that night I started to bleed. And when I say bleed, I don't mean spot or have a period. I mean hemorrhage. Like, I had blood running down my legs. And I just knew in my heart of hearts that there was no way a baby could survive that. Brandon took me to the ER because of the amount of blood I was bleeding. I stood up and I nearly fainted. I was white as a ghost. And I had probably the cruelest ER visit ever. And the doctor was just like, you're young, you can make more kids. Didn't know my history, didn't know me from Adam. Had absolutely no respect for the life within me. Refused to do an ultrasound to tell us that night for sure if our baby had lived or died. I signed out against medical advice. I told the nurse that they were going to let me out against medical advice, but I was going to take my IV out myself and walk out of the hospital. I was just so disgusted with how I was treated. And so I went back to my doctor. I had a different doctor who had 2 sons and had 2 daughters who had both had 2 daughter-in-laws who had both had miscarriages. And he was so disgusted with the way I was treated. And he said, I am so shocked that Brandon didn't get hauled out by security and punch somebody. Like, punch somebody and get hauled out by security. And they did an ultrasound and there was no baby. No baby, no heartbeat. And after that, all I remember is everything in slow motion. Nothing had sound. I remember standing at the counter trying to make a follow-up appointment, and they were like, oh, February 6th. And I was like, no, that's my daughter's other birthday. I can't do this on her birthday. And they gave me enough medicine to put me out. And I laid in bed, cramping, bleeding, gone in the world. I was on my own little space and time dimension. I went back to that doctor, and that doctor at that point said that my fertility issues were too severe, that I needed to see a reproductive endocrinologist. So I attempted to. I saw the one in my city, who was rude. And I've always taken the position that our insurance is the same as us paying for services. And as a paying customer, I deserve a certain amount of respect. And I deserve to be on the medical team making the decisions. Like, you just don't tell me what I'm going to do. I want my options, and we can discuss the pros and the cons, and then from there we'll go. So I got on the internet. I found a doctor in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a 2-hour drive. And we did a fresh cycle of in vitro where they removed 20 plus eggs. I don't know, 26, 27. I have to look at the records. And like every day it dwindled, like how many fertilized, or how many were mature, how many fertilized, dwindle. We transferred 2. They did not implant. I actually started bleeding before I was even done with the cycle. My progesterone was just so low, even with like these huge shots going in my butt every night. Then we took a couple months off. We did a frozen cycle, and that didn't work. We transferred 3. We moved to Virginia. We started the adoption process, and our Xander came to us. After Xander, we really thought we want another biological baby, but it's going to take forever. You know, it took us 2+ years for Julian. I had done, at the point between our miscarriage and Xander was almost a 1.5 years that had gone by, and we weren't using any birth control, and I wasn't getting pregnant still, so we just thought it was going to take forever. So I found a doctor in Richmond, Virginia, explained my case to him, and he said, let's go for it. His opinion was, instead of doing Clomid like I did for Julianne, that I should do injectables. And if I overstimulated, which they check on ultrasound, they would just cancel the cycle. And we'd only be out the money for the medications, which my insurance covered at the time. So he was like, you know, I'm not scared. The one doctor wanted to do IVF because he was scared that I was going to be a Kate Gosselin and have like septuplets or whatever. He was kind of a newer reproductive endocrinologist. The doctor I had in Virginia was like an old school doctor. And he was like, we're not going to end up on the cover of any magazine. We'll just cancel if things are wild and crazy. So that was his opinion. And so that's what we did. And I got pregnant on the 1st month with Solomon. And then Solomon came a month early. So him and Xander are only 13 months apart. And I remember thinking, holy cow. And everybody kept saying, everybody gets pregnant after they adopt, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, yeah, after they spend thousands of dollars at a reproductive endocrinologist's office like our insurance did. That's always been one of my peeves about what people say after adoption, but that's another day. So, after Solomon, we were very overwhelmed because we had 2 children that were 13 months apart. They were supposed to be 14. Someone came a month early, so it was like madness. We were homeschooling. Brandon's job had him working crazy hours, so we didn't really have a lot of routine in our life as far as Brandon. And so we waited. And at the same time, we had never intended to only adopt one child. And especially because Xander is transracially adopted, we wanted to adopt again. And that's where we had our failed adoption of Annalise in 2011. So Xander was born in 2009, Solomon 2010, our failed adoption in 2011. After our failed adoption and I had healed a little bit, it's still very hard to talk about. I went back to my doctor, Dr. R, and I said to him, I would like to have another baby. And he said, okay, well, we know what worked last time, let's do it again. And so I said, alrighty, and we did a cycle and it didn't work. And I thought, oh no, yeah, my body has changed so much, and it hadn't. I was just being paranoid. And so we, at that point, we did the same thing again, and it worked. And there was only one baby, which Brandon always asks at my ultrasounds, is there only one baby? Or how many babies is it? Because Brandon is paranoid of twins, and twins run in my family. So that is how we came to be a family.